Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dagmai Bobby podcast. I'm your host, Dagmai, and today is going to be a very exciting and incredible episode because we have Jack in our show, and we're going to learn a lot. This is going to be extremely exciting, and I know you've been waiting for this episode. I have been too, and well, let's just jump into it. Hello, Jack. How are you?
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here too.
Awesome, awesome. I'm super excited. I'm a huge fan and I'm super glad that you came here. Let's just start with a simple introduction. Tell us about you. Who are you?
I fell in love with computers as a teenager, and I've always been just in love with them. And I went and got a degree in computer engineering, and then went and got a job doing network security engineering. So that was configuring firewalls and looking at the perimeter and configuring the perimeter and looking at logs and looking for intrusions and submitting reports based on what I've discovered. And during that time, I was really into podcasts, and I was like, well, where are the podcasts that cover like good hacker stories? I mean, there's like some high drama stuff going on. There's break-ins to the Pentagon, and there's stealing millions of dollars, and it just gets covered in the news in like the most boring way. So I was like, wait, why aren't someone like doing good stories on this? So I got the idea to make a podcast to talk about some of these really crazy stories that happen in cybersecurity and hacker world. And that's where I started Darknet Diaries, and it has gone on to be a very successful podcast.
Awesome, awesome. I love the podcast. It's pretty exciting. And okay, that's how you started. Um, I guess let's just take it way back into your childhood and talk to me. What kind of child were you? Were you, techie? Did you break stuff apart? Did you play with computers and stuff? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, my dad really wanted me to do sports, so he was always trying to teach me sports and stuff. But I found an extreme fascination with technical things, technology. Of course, I took everything apart and explored it and stuff. But it wasn't until I got the internet that I really fell in love with computers, and those AOL days of being able to just talk to anyone and download things and surf the internet and just see all the different things a computer can do. It was incredible. And it like there's this period of your life like before and after you find the thing that you love, right? Like your
Yeah.
whole life changes after that, and now suddenly you're in life 2.0, and that's how it really felt for me. And so ever since then, I've just been so addicted to computers.
Awesome, awesome. Was it back then that you were interested in cybersecurity and hacking and stuff?
Not entirely. Like I wasn't, trying to cause trouble. I of course was in those chat rooms where they were trading 0 days and exploits and phone hacking mechanisms and stuff like that. And I downloaded some of it and checked it out, but it was confusing to me, and I didn't know how to apply it. And I was thinking, who would I ever steal from, or what's the point of this? And so I didn't really explore it too much, but things showed up all the time, and we tried it, but it wasn't ever from malicious intent. It wasn't. So the security side of things didn't show up until I got a degree or I got my certification in CCNA, Cisco Certified Network Associate, and then CCNP, Cisco Certified Network Professional. And when I had a job as a network operations technician, somebody said, "Do you want the security engineer position?" And I said, "You had me at engineer. Just say no more." And so I joined because I liked the idea of it being an engineer, and it was there that I discovered, oh, security is perfect for me because, like I said, I got my degree in computer engineering, which is a very broad degree. Here's 4 different programming languages to learn. Here's operating systems. Here's a little about security. Here's how to work these applications. Here's how Linux works. Here's how Windows works. And so you learn a little bit about everything, logic and Boolean, and then when you join in the security world, it's like, well, you need to know a little bit about everything to understand all the different aspects of how an attack works and what you're looking for and all this. And so that's when that's when I got into security, and I realized it was a perfect fit because it was everything that I'd ever learned previously was all coming into focus there.
What was your educational journey? Like from high school to college to university, what was it like for you?
High school, yeah, it was in high school. I just took the normal classes, nothing too exciting. I think math was my favorite class. I like just flew through math classes, and I would get way ahead of all the other students, and I'd say, "Excuse me, can I just go to the next level up?" And they're like, "You can't really jump up in the middle of the school year." I was like, "Well, I've finished the book, like, so why not?" And eventually, I was able to convince a teacher to let me go up in the middle of the school year, and so I went to the next higher up math class, and took a while to catch up, but then after a while was passing those kids. And yeah, it was really a lot of self-study in the math there, and then eventually finishing the book before the school was over and saying, yeah, once again, I think this class was too easy for me, I want to take the next one up. And so yeah, it was really fun to just kind of fly through math like that. The reason why I like math so much is because it's such a sure-footed place to be, right? So biology and medicine feels like the opposite to me. When somebody is sick and you say, "Oh, all you need is this medicine," but that medicine doesn't work for them because they're different and everyone's different. That seems like such a strange world for me to operate in. Like, wait, how? If you're sick, you take this medicine and you get better. Why didn't it work for you? What's happening here? Why aren't everybody built the same? And so biology and is a science that I just cannot have any sure-footedness in, right? I put my foot on the ground there thinking, oh, here's what happens when this happens, and it's just like, no, that only happens in certain creatures but not in those ones, and it depends on if you're male or female. Like, wait, how? What? I don't understand why this just doesn't happen all the time. And so it felt like stepping in quicksand all the time with biology. But with math, it's like, no, this is always, 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 always true forever and ever. And it's great. And it just feels so, you feel so confident with math after a while. But the other thing I loved about math is it felt like the more math I learned, which throughout college, I went all the way up to like calculus 3 or 4. As the highest math I've ever taken. And it felt like the more math I learned, the more problem-solving tools that I got in my head, right? Like, so I would look at a math problem, and I'd say, okay, I have 600 formulas that I could possibly use here to try to solve this. Let me try to pick which one would be the most effective here. And so you go through this problem-solving method every time you try to do a math problem, and that, I think, is really just where I shine, where I look at a problem and I say, okay, I have 500 ways to solve this, or I have 500 potential ways to solve this. Let me try to find the best one. And that's kind of like my engineering mind just jumping into action, saying, oh, and the more math I learn, the more tools I have to solve problems. And so to me, math was just a practice in problem solving. And that's what I loved most about it. It was like, okay, here's a new problem. What tools do I have to solve this? And that just alone was just so much fun. And I learned the higher I went up in math class, the other people around me were also very good at solving the problems in their life. There wasn't somebody in like higher calculus saying, "Oh, I can't get it together, man. My car's broke. My girlfriend left me. I can't find a job anywhere." No, they were all really good at solving problems. They were like, "No, my car was broke, but I fixed it, and that problem with my relationship just wasn't working, so I had to end it." And like they just had like a very sure understanding of the world, and it was fantastic to just be around these people who understood how to solve the problems in their life, compared to some of these other classes I was taking where people were just not getting it together. They didn't know how to do just basic problem solving. And so I thought that math carried over into other things in life where you're just so practiced at solving problems. You've solved thousands and thousands of problems at this point that when there's a problem in your real life or on a computer or anywhere else, you're just like, oh, great, I could just run through the problem-solving techniques I've been doing forever, which is where I felt it was with math. So yeah, math was very exciting for me in high school, and I did a lot of math in college. Yeah, in college I mostly just focused on computers though, and like I said, I was taking programming classes and operating systems and learning about file big endian and little endian and compression and all the stuff that was just related to computers. And again, you walk out of college with a computer engineering degree just with a little bit of knowledge in a lot of areas. You're not really a master of anything. And so that's kind of where I ended college.
Awesome. That sounds extremely exciting. All right, let's go to your career then. Tell me about your journey, like from the first job you had up until Darknet Diaries.
Yeah. Well, after college, I thought I was smart and great. And so I was looking for high-paying jobs, thinking, "Oh, I'm an engineer now. Where are the engineer jobs?" And I couldn't find them anywhere. Everything was just like internship, and I didn't understand I needed to start at the bottom. I thought I was had a leg up, and I couldn't find a job. Um, and so I squandered a few years there. I went to Las Vegas and I was a dealer at the casino, and I worked in a pharmacy for a while, doing medications, and eventually went back and got my CCNA, and that got me a job in a network operations center. And yeah, it was there that my technical career finally took off. And I spent 10 years there, going from NOC technician to senior NOC technician to junior security engineer to senior security engineer, and eventually subject matter expert in security engineering. Yeah, and like I said, I was looking at threats in the network, logs, configuring the perimeter to be secure, and troubleshooting the security devices in the network. And that was great. That taught me so it was a MSSP, so that's a multi-tenant. We took care of lots of different companies, networks, right? Anything from banks to schools to government, retail, you name it. And so I was in just hundreds of different environments and learning how they set up their network and what was the point of this and how do they do that and what are those machines for. And I was in data centers and exploring places, and it was just a really, really great experience to just be exposed to just hundreds of different environments, trying to make sense of why everyone did the things they did. And then, of course, after a while, being able to give recommendations saying, well, here's what I've seen after seeing hundreds of different environments, how people are securing things and what they're doing. And in those days as well, I was going to places like DEF CON and RSA and other hacker conferences around to also gain an understanding of what the community is doing as well.
Interesting.
And it was there while I was a network security engineer that I started Darknet Diaries and then quit my job to go into the podcast full time.
Awesome. That's exciting. All right. What was your first programming language?
That one is interesting because there's like, here's what you have in front of you, but then here's what you fall in love with, right? So the first computer was the Apple IIe, and on there was BASIC. And so this is like very simple programming. Each line has its own number, right? So you have to put like 10, print hello, and then 20, go to 10, right? And it would just loop back to 10 again and again and again. And that's the whole program. And so you could run BASIC like that. And that was fun just to say like, oh, look at that. I can make it say hello and ask what my name is and enter things and maybe do a little bit of logic. And so that was like the first place that I played in. But when I got on the internet, I was having a lot of fun playing MUDs back in the 90s. MUDs is a multi-user dungeon, and it's like Dungeons and Dragons, but it's text-based and it's online. So you walk into a room and you see a goblin and you say, swing sword at goblin, and goblin attacks you for 3 points and you attack it for 5 points. And it's really fun to just read that. And it's almost like you're in an interactive fictional book or something because you're now attacking things, but you're just reading it. And so I was like, wow, this is really cool. How is this made? And the people who made it were teaching me C, which it was made in C, and then allowing me to go into the code and make new changes to it, create new abilities that the character can do and new areas of the world. And so this was the first time I really fell in love with programming, was when I could actually build things that was cool that other people could interact with, and it was a collaborative effort. So it wasn't just me making a stupid thing on my computer, but it was now me making things that dozens of players could play. It wasn't that big of a place, but there were dozens of players, and that was really fun. And to see other people looking at my code and saying, oh, you could have done it more effectively this way or that way, was really helpful too, right? Because there wasn't good there wasn't any programming classes in high school. I guess there was a basic one, but I don't remember C being there. And then Perl became the next programming language that I loved, because I loved how small and compact it could be, and how there's all these like hidden variables that you can save things into and not explicitly say you are, but yet it's there. And I thought it was really fun to just have like this really shorthand code. And so Perl became something I loved. Unfortunately, Perl really died down at this point, and people hate Perl, and I picked the wrong language there, but yeah, that was kind of my programming journey.
Awesome, awesome.
I should end it by saying that the languages I use now are Python and JavaScript, most of all, mostly for programming web pages, and yeah, mostly for that.
All right, big fan of Python as well here, and yeah, that's pretty cool. What about like your first hacking story or cybersecurity story? Can you tell me about that? Like the issue that you encountered or tried to fix or tried to hack or whatever, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's an innocent story. It's just that, I was playing SimCity back in the day, a city building game, and I would run out of money a lot. And I'd say, "How do you get more money?" And this was not an online game; it was just a local run game. But I was like, "Well, there's a money somewhere in the game." So I started looking at the code and not quite finding it, but eventually. Opened up a hex editor. Someone told me online you should try editing it with a hex editor. So I got a hex editor and I opened up the save game file with that. And yeah, I don't know what's going on here. There's just gibberish. So I started changing values, this to that, and that file wouldn't open anymore. So I learned, okay, you could corrupt these files. I got to revert back, and just after messing with the file for a couple hours or so, I eventually found which value was the money and was able to change that number to give myself, trillions of dollars in the game so that I could just build whatever. And it felt like a sandbox at that point instead of a hard game that I had to earn money with. And that was really fun to just change the file and edit it that way. Another similar story was a video game I had. I think it was Police Quest or something like that, where you had to shoot the bad guys. And I changed all the audio files to my own sound effects of like pew pew and and stuff like that. So it wasn't really a hacking story, but it was modifying the game to do something differently. And yeah, those are, I think, my early ones.
Something I've noticed actually is that from some of your episodes is like some hacking journeys start from, cracking some games and stuff. Like that's how most people start, and it's pretty fascinating. Do you think would you call yourself a gamer? Do you game now?
Yeah, definitely a gamer. I don't game as much anymore. I usually game when I'm sick or yeah, down and out for some reason, and then I find myself like doom scrolling way too much that I'm like, if I'm going to just be here in bed doing nothing, I might as well play a game that I've been putting off for a long time. So yeah, I still do play video games.
Interesting. Before we jump into your podcast, just to get to know you a bit more, like what kind of hobbies do you have? Like what kind of person are you? What do you enjoy doing other than games, of course?
I like learning still. I like expanding my skill set. I don't like being stuck with like, oh, when I was a kid, we used to do it this way. I like to say, what are the kids doing now? What are they doing now? I want to learn what they're learning, right? So technology is still like a big hobby of mine where I want to learn all the new stuff, whether I like it or not. Like, just even going on to social media platforms that I don't agree with, or like, it's like, well, if people are doing it, I gotta see what's going on. What's the fuss here? And so I get on places that, I just get into technology that I don't necessarily like, but I just want to see what's going on. So technology, of course, is going to be my lifelong love. But outside of that, I like dancing.
That's awesome.
And playing music. I'll play piano and guitar. I'm learning those things. And I like to learn languages.
Did not expect that.
Yeah. And I think I spent a lot of time with those things just there.
Awesome. Dancing was not something I was expecting, actually. Are you a good dancer?
I know. No, I'm not. And it's not something I enjoyed for most of my life. But only recently did I think that this was an interesting thing, and so I've been going dancing.
Awesome. All right. What about like your beliefs, spirituality, faith, and lifestyle, stuff like that? Talk to me about that.
I like to try to be optimistic about things. That I think I default to that, right? So if something bad happens, I like to think, well, what could possibly good come out of this? Maybe I learned something that, oh, okay, this is the wrong thing to do in life. Don't do that anymore, right? So that's great. I'm a smarter person because of this, right?
Yeah.
And so I try to always be optimistic about most things, and that comes to tech as well. I think there's a lot of people who are depressed in the way that tech is moving, and they're feeling like it's very dooming kind of scenario. And I think the opposite. I think, wow, no, this is such a cool new thing that we're just now being able to create. We couldn't create it before. And it's very exciting to get in there and see what's going on and learn what the potential of it can be. And I think personally, what my goals are is probably to try to reach my potential, right? So what am I capable of in the world? What would my best version of myself be like if it had all the opportunities to do the things it wants to do, I want to do? And so that's like, achieving the greatness that I think is inside me. And I think we all think, oh, just give me a chance. I know I can do something great. And that's what I think my main focus is to empower myself to reach my potential. What is the highest level I can accomplish in life? And whether that's, being a great dancer or musician or storyteller or author or creating companies or startups or whatever the case is, there's a lot of goals that I have there, and I want to work tirelessly to try to accomplish as much as possible in life. And not only that, I feel like it's really um, satisfying to try to help others do that as well, right? So I just get a great deal of satisfaction when empowering others to help them out of whatever rut they're stuck in or mud, to say, oh, I didn't know there was this whole world here. I like that. I want to explore more of that. And so if I can show people how to improve themselves, that's very satisfying to me as well. So I think that's kind of my philosophies in a nutshell.
Interesting. That's very lovely. I guess topics like this are very, different in the US and abroad. That's why I am asking you here. I'm actually also currently curious that are you married? Do you have kids? I have no idea about that. Are
You're
you?
gonna stay curious on that question because I'm not answering that one.
All right, all right. Let's move to Darknet Diaries. It is
Okay.
one of probably like my number one podcast series. I fell in love with it when I discovered the Xbox hackers episode.
That was one of my favorites.
Same. I really love it. And I've been just binge watching, binge listening every single episode. And I know you put in a lot of research and process and editing and recording, and it's just hard work. So, I guess talk to me, like, what was the origin story of the podcast? Like, what were the early days like?
Yeah, there's a lot of different pieces of influence that came into focus at the same time. One is I watched a lot of talks, cybersecurity talks, and Leslie Carhart and Johnny Xmas talked on stage once and said, "Hey, if you want to be a rock star in the cybersecurity industry, don't try to go to a cybersecurity conference and say some cool talk that everyone's going to buzz about, because we all know all the stuff. It's really hard to impress us. Instead, go to something like Comic-Con or Dragon Con or any other conference that there's not hackers everywhere, and you tell them, hey, I'm a hacker and this is the stuff I've done, and you watch, people will crowd around you like you're some sort of rock star because they think you're an amazing hacker." And I thought, well, that's interesting. Don't specifically talk to people in your industry, but instead talk to people outside your industry and show them how cool your industry is. And I thought that was a really interesting thing. There was interviews that I would listen to, like with John McAfee, who had crazy wild stories about his life on the run and all these things that I was just like so glued to those stories. And I'm like, man, I wish there were more stories like that. And again, Mitnick wrote a book, Ghost in the Wires. And I was like, this is such a good story about social engineering and hacking phones. Like, I wish there were more stories like this. And things like This American Life and Radiolab were great podcasts that I was like, man, these are great stories, but they're not cybersecurity related. I wish they did cybersecurity related stories, right? And so there was just a big mix of things. Someone else said in a talk, there's a lot of money to be made in explaining complex things simply. Like, a lot of people just can't explain really technical topics in simple terms that anyone can understand. And I didn't quite understand what that meant. But like, there's just all these ideas in my head that I thought, man, I really love podcasts. I wish there was a podcast on cybersecurity that was high drama, full of storytelling, but also journalistic and fact-checked and good. And I could not find that in the world. And I just wanted to consume that as a person. Like, where is that? Where is that? And like that idea kind of just was in my head for like a year of like, man, do I need to make this? I don't want to make this. This is too hard. I don't know any of this stuff. I don't know storytelling techniques or journalism. I know cybersecurity. And so it did not feel like something I could do. And I don't know, after like 9 months, I eventually said, well, maybe I'll read a book on how to do storytelling and see if I could like learn this. And I picked up a book called Out on the Wire by but it was interviewing a lot of people in the NPR space. So it interviewed Ira Glass and Roman Mars and Jad Abumrad, and these are people that I know because I listen to their shows. And I was like, wow, these are great. These people actually have like their skills. They've got it figured out because they've done this for 20 years. They've won Peabody Awards with their award-winning storytelling. So it was really helpful to listen to that and or to read it actually. And it gave me like a foundation, a framework on how to structure stories and how to build them. And then that got me thinking, okay, if I were to tell this story, how would it play out? And I was just thinking it through in my head, and eventually started writing things down and putting it together. And of course, the first story I worked on took like 3 months to make, and I realized it was way too big of a story. And I said, this is definitely not my first story. I need to throw this out and find an easier story to start with, like a throwaway story that I could just, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It's just my first one that I can do to get through the awkwardness of your first. Because the first one I did pick was a really good story, and I was like, this is so good. And I had read like so many articles on it and watched documentaries on it, and I was just like, wow, it's such a good story. I can't wait to present this. But it was just way too big of a story for me at the time. So yeah, I threw the first one out after working on it for like 3 months, and then I started again with an easier story. And the second one I did actually was episode 1 of my show. But I made that, and then I sent it to 10 people, 10 friends, and I said, hey, I'm thinking about starting a podcast. Here's episode 1. Please listen to it and answer these questions. Because I wanted to be very specific with the questions. Number 1, did you listen to it? Number 2, did you listen to all of it? Number 3, okay, you probably didn't listen to all of it. What point did you turn it off? Because that's a crucial point for me. If there's a point where you turned it off, you have to tell me, because I need to make that point better. Well, everything before that needs to be better. And it's very important you tell me where you turned it off. And then, question number 4, if I make another, would you listen to that or nah? You skipping it or listening to it? And, question number 5, what was your favorite part? And I had all these questions. So out of the 10 people I sent this to, 2 responded with like some of the answers. It was not very well received. These are my best friends too, right? They just were like, I'll get to it. And they just never listened to it. So the 2 that responded were actually very high praise. And I was like, I learned a lot from this. Thank you so much. And I learned, it helped me pinpoint exactly how to make things better. And they were encouraging me to go forward. So I was like, okay, I'll go forward. And so I made 4 of them and then launched the show with the first 4 episodes. And when I launched it, I went to a B-Sides event, and I told everybody there, hey, I got this new show I just launched. Check it out. And was trying to spread the word as best I could at a conference.
Wow, that's a beautiful story. Whatever happened to that first story though that you were working on for months? Did you ever publish it?
No, I didn't. So that's the story of Albert Gonzalez, and he stole like hundreds of thousands of credit cards or something, and then did ATM cashing on them and tried to make a lot of money on it. And I mean, the story goes deep, and he's still in prison from it. And I was hoping one day to interview him and hear the story from him firsthand. So I still have it as a to-do item, and maybe I'll visit him in prison one day or wait for him to get out and tell us the story. But he is one of the most famous hackers of all time because of that. And I like I said, it was just too big of a thing to go into like the biggest hack of all time as the first episode. But that's how I was thinking at the time. Let's go for the big ones.
That's pretty ambitious, actually. It's pretty inspiring. All right, so like your show, it's pretty unique because most of your guests are pretty private, and they're hackers, and they might even be in prison and stuff. Like, talk to me, like, how do you like talk to these guests, and how do you get them to say yes? And then like after like, they said yes, how do you set up all the recording and everything? And the editing and all the storytelling and everything. Talk to me about the whole work process.
Yeah, I think by design, especially in the early days, I was trying to get the people on the show that don't want to be on the show, right? It's like that's the stuff. I want the ghosts. I want to interview ghosts, people who will never tell their story. And so, from the get-go, I was like, ooh, that's illegal criminals doing their thing. That's NSA. NSA will never come on my show, and other nation state actors. Like, these are the people I want. And so from going to conferences and being part of the community for the last 10 years and watching tons and tons of talks, I got a sense, especially of people on Twitter, who is in those circles that have these really good stories that we'll never tell. And I just went down the line and just started tapping on shoulders like, hey, I know you have a good story. Can you come on my show and tell it? And 9 times out of 10, there was no answer. Like, of course not, definitely not. I'm not even going to tell this guy no. I'm busy, and I mean, I just as an example, I don't think he was one of the early ones I messaged, but there was a time where Tesla got hacked, right? And Elon was tweeting about it, and I was like, oh, that's amazing! If I could get Elon on the show to talk about Tesla being hacked, this would be such a good episode, right? So I'm trying to get Elon on the show to tell us that. Like, that's ridiculous. That would never happen. Another one is like trying to message the people in the Chinese APT, like, hey, I hear you're hacking, Russia or something. I would love to hear the story about how you did it. Or even asking Fancy Bear, how did you hack Ukraine? And honestly, I was messaging people on LinkedIn and such who I thought might have been involved with that sort of thing, and it was that crazy. And of course, nobody's giving yeses, but when you finally do get a yes from asking those kind of people, holy cow, the guest that says yes to it is just like, what? How are you able to tell me this? This is insane. But because they just don't care, or their NDA is lapsed, or they've been arrested and gone to prison and they're back, and they can tell their story now because it's all in the past. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. This is so good, because there is, and so it's a numbers game to just ask a ton of people to come on the show. And once I established that, where it's like, these are the kind of people I'm looking for, and word got out, like, maybe 2-3 years into it, 40 episodes into it, that's when people started realizing, hey, if I have a really good story that I want someone to cover properly, who would I go to? Oh, it's Jack. And Darknet Diaries is definitely the place to share my story. And that's when I got the guy Sanad from that Xbox Underground episode that you love so much. When he got out of prison, he came to me and said, I don't know who you are, but I was told to tell you my story. And no joke, when people tell me this, I respond, not knowing anything about them. I respond saying, oh, can I see your arrest record or your criminal report? And they're like, yeah, here you go. And I'm like, holy cow, this guy went to prison for hacking Xboxes. This is amazing. Yes, when can we talk? And so I was very lucky to start getting people. Another one was actually someone from the NSA that's found me at DEF CON and said, I would like to tell you a story about when the NSA hacked ISIS. And I'm like, what? No, NSA is never going to tell public story about when they hacked anything. And he's like, yep, I got approval from General Nakasone. I'm ready to go. Are you ready? And I'm like, what? Yes, I am. And so, so I became kind of the person that covers that specific thing, right? And of course, there are a ton of people who reach out, especially, CEOs and corporate entities that want to talk about how, they know the latest in ransomware trends and that sort of thing. And I don't want those people, so I just ignore them. But I do get a lot of really interesting inbound people asking me if sharing their story with me, and those often become episodes. So yeah, at the beginning, it was a lot of tapping on shoulders. It was a lot of looking at Google alerts. So I set up some alerts that said, biggest hack ever, or hack that reads like a movie script, or hacker dies. Like anything that a Google alert would show up with those things were interesting articles that would show up. Oh, hacker sentenced was probably my favorite, right? So if we have a hacker sentenced in an article, that means that, well, that hacker was found guilty. Okay, great. So they were guilty of what? Oh, here's the criminal report. Here's the court documents. Because in America, we get to see federal cases. They're in the public eye. And so we could see all of the evidence and the affidavits and the subpoenas and all the court transcripts. It's all out there. And so I can look through it to see what was this case, and I could read all of it. And then, from there, you can then say, okay, well, a hacker did some crime, and here's what they did. And so once a hacker is sentenced, it's like the perfect trigger for a Google alert to say, there is a great story here. Now the whole story here is here. And that's what I love most. I think I call my show a slow news show, right? So you have cybersecurity shows that are like, here's the latest in this week's news. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, here's the news from 6 years ago. Let me tell you what happened. We finally know because the hacker finally got sentenced. And so, in the this week's news, we don't know who did it, what they did, how much damage was done, all this stuff. And then you might hear it in the news cycle like 2 or 3 times, and then you don't hear about it anymore. And so there's no follow-up of, a person was arrested, or no, it was just an internal mishap, or, the company went out of business from it, or whatever. You don't hear any of that stuff. It falls out of the news cycle. And so my favorite thing is to find those stories that are complete and say, okay, here's what happened, and then here's what happened next, and next, and next. And we have all the answers to all the things at this point. And that's when I think the story is ripe to tell, instead of, I don't know what happened, but here's what happened yesterday. Don't ask me any more questions. Like, that just feels so unsatisfying to me. And I love hearing the whole thing. So that's kind of the idea of the show as well, is I don't mind having old stories, but they're finally ready to tell. And it's because there was a lot of stuff that's happened in between now and then. And yeah, I love that. I'm a slow news junkie, I like to say.
You got the guests and you research through their stories and everything. And then what about the storytelling and the whole editing process and everything like that? Also, I'm a huge fan of the thumbnails of your show. So talk to me a bit about that.
Yeah, the storytelling technique, I take a lot of time to figure out where does this story start? How does it unfold? Who's involved? What are the characters? And really focus a lot on this. And one of the things that I learned about storytelling, which is one of my favorite aspects of it, is there's a lot of chemicals that can be released in your brain through storytelling, right? So there's dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins, serotonin. These are neurochemicals that when you hear certain things, it can trigger that to secrete in your brain. And so as a storyteller, I'm like, okay, first principles, that's what I'm working with here, right? That's the core, that's my operating system. And I call that wetware. The stuff that's happening in your brain is wetware. And so I'm like, okay, how do I work this wetware to give you the most amount of dopamine, the most amount of oxytocin, the most amount of serotonin? And now I'm reverse engineering that. I'm like, oh, okay, so a cliffhanger gives you a lot of dopamine. That's interesting. So how do I create a cliffhanger? How do I, or get some high suspense thing, but then just let it linger? Don't resolve it right away. Don't just jump into the next part of the story, but let that hang out there for a second. It gives you a maximum amount of dopamine. Oxytocin is something that can happen when you really resonate with someone, when you feel for them, when you're sympathetic with them, if you feel sorry for them, right? And so my favorite part is when you're rooting for the bad guy, but the bad guy loses, right? So you're like this criminal hacker that's trying really hard to break into Sony or something, and you're like, wow, that's amazing, you did that. And then they get arrested, and then you're like, wait, why was I cheering for the bad guy? And so now you have this sort of sympathetic understanding of him, and that triggers oxytocin in your brain. And when you have these neurochemicals, they're all feel-good chemicals. They make you happier, they make you more alert, they make you more energetic, they make you more kind. And so I think these are real nice gifts to give to people. And so that's honestly how I'm working through stories in my head, is how do I create this neurochemicals in your brain, right? And so when I hear someone telling the story, I'm looking for those parts that have that real strong human connection. I'm looking for those parts that have that suspenseful thing, that left turn, that twist and you thought we were going this way, but suddenly everything changed and now we're going this way. And you're like, I have to know what's next. And when you're in that stage of like on the edge of your seat, where you're like, I can't believe like all this stuff is happening. Where is this? How is this going to end? And you're just so excited to hear what's next. That is just pure dopamine that's happening in your head. And so, yeah, I'm taking these, what my love is, which is computers and cybersecurity, right? And I'm trying to deliver it in neurochemical form to you. It's not easy. It takes a lot of artistic aspects, right? So this is not something that I can just like tell you here's how it happens, but I think it's very much an artistic ability to kind of sense the flow of the story and how people are receiving it. And honestly, I wipe my brain of the story like over and over so that as I'm reading it or as I'm hearing it again after it's first recorded, I try to completely forget it and listen to it as if I'm a first-time listener. Oh, wow, this is an interesting story. What happens next? Because I want to have that same experience. And like I said, I wanted this show to exist, so at least I should be able to enjoy it at some point too, right? So if I could just erase it from my memory and be like, I'm listening to this for the first time. That's probably one of my favorite parts of making it is when I first get to hear it as well. And that's when I have a lot of notes of like, oh no, you should bring this in earlier or move that to the end. And so there are tons of editing that goes on where I'll delete huge sections or add in all new parts and take things out and move stuff around and really trying to structure that stuff, like I said, for optimizing your wetware. And yeah, that's the storytelling aspect. I mean, I could go into storytelling for hours because I really do put a lot of focus into it and just take so many notes from the storytellers that are before me, right? I mean, some of my inspiration was Rod Serling from Twilight Zone, Paul Harvey from that's the rest of the story. Ira Glass from This American Life, Malcolm Gladwell. There's just so many people, and that I was just like, what are your tricks? How did you master this? What did you do here to make this such an interesting thing to keep me on the edge of my seat? And so I've learned quite a bit throughout the years. So yeah, I could go on and on about that. I really geek out on that. But you also asked about thumbnails, and I thought, you know what? There was something about music albums at the time when I was starting that I was thinking, when a musician puts an album out in the world and they have the cover art of their album, that really is meaningless. Everyone just cares about the music. Nobody really cares about the album art. But there is something special. I think about the album art. It gives the whole music a certain vibe, a certain feel. Like if you just think about, I don't know, The Cure, right? So the band The Cure has almost an emo or goth kind of style to them, and you can see that in their clothes and the way they dress and the way they look. The people of the band, and I think that goes a long way on their fans, where they resonate with that kind of look and that attitude. There's something there about just the visualization that gives you an attitude for it. If they were just very, suit and tie, very, prestigious looking or something, the whole music would have a different sound to it, even if it sounded exactly the same, right? There's just something special about the visualization of what it is you're consuming. And I wanted to play around with that. And so every episode I make custom artwork that I think brings you into this world. That's another thing I want to do is have like your imagination of the mind get expanded when you're listening to this thing, or theater of the mind is what I call it, so that you're imagining these worlds and these people and what's happening in cyberspace and all this stuff, because there isn't a visual aspect to any of this. It's all on a computer. If I were to actually have like a TV show of Darknet Diaries, all you would see is someone sitting at a computer typing the whole time. That would be the most boring looking thing. But if I can explain it to you through this audio version, now your mind is thinking about what it looks like and where the packets are and the files and all these kind of things. And I think it's just way better looking than actual visuals there. And so if I could just give you one little picture to expand your mind or to bring you into this world, to make you think about things in a whole new way, I think that's really fun. So I think the images that I put for the episodes are just for fun. I really have like an artistic side to me that is really fun to play around with and make that sort of stuff. So I really look forward to making the images every episode, and it's a labor of love to do because I don't know, it's just really fun.
Interesting. That's pretty awesome. I love the artwork. In fact, it was an inspiration for my show because on my show I just have these characters and everything, and I took inspiration from that. So like, I really love it. From your episodes, what was the hardest episode to record, and like, why was it hard?
I think the Xbox Underground one jumps out at me. That one took about a year to make. Oh no, was it 6 months? Somewhere between 6 months and a year. And um, that was because when I first heard the story, I was like, wait a minute, this is a huge story. Um, let me get out some let me research this thoroughly, right? So I got out some paper and I was writing down all the characters. So we've got the real name, but then the name they go by online, and then the nickname that their friends call them, right? So there's like three different names that everyone has, and that gets confusing as you're going through the story. And then whether or not they were arrested or what they did or how they're connected to each other, and who knows who, and are these hackers or are these police or are these victims, or all these different names show up in the story. And so it's really hard to just keep the names straight. And then there was a timeline of events that I remember getting a big piece of paper out and just trying to figure out what happened when and who was where. And because there's people all over the world and doing different things at different times. And that was a difficult thing. So it was really a challenge there. But at the same time, I was thinking, man, if I just have one guy tell this story, you're just going to be like, no way. And so I really want to bring in more people to tell this story. So I think in that one I interviewed 4 people. 3 of them were involved with the Xbox Underground scene, and just there's something that just really sets in when you're listening to more than one person explain what happened in that situation, where you're just like, holy cow, these guys did really do this. This is insane, because it is one of those stories that's too good to be true. And so when you're interviewing 3 or 4 people, well, now you've got to, spend a month or 2 months just trying to find them and get them and schedule them and get them on the phone and record it. And one didn't work very well the first time, so I had to re-record the whole thing a second time. And it was I had to organize that recording session to pay like someone to go and record the guy in person, because the recording equipment wasn't very good where he was. So I had someone go with a microphone to him and then record the call while I was on the phone with him. And that was just getting extra people involved and all this extra stuff. That just took a while. And then when I had it all, I was like, man, this isn't just one episode, this is 2 episodes. And so now I'm making 2 episodes out of this. So I just had so much tape, and trying to take the hours of tape and mash it together to be one coherent timeline. Man, that just took so much work. And honestly, because it took 6 months to a year, I didn't want to rush it as well. I wanted it to be the best work I've ever done. And because of that, I can't consistently do that every month or every 2 weeks, right? I can't spend 6 months to a year on every episode. And so that was just really a really special one to do, to be like, no, I've been working on this for so long and I finally have it done. And here you go. I hope you like it. It's maybe a high bar that I might not ever get back to, because I just don't get a chance to spend that much time on them so often.
That's pretty fascinating. It is, I think, one of the most popular episodes, and a lot of people love it too. So you did wonderful for that episode. You inspired a lot of people to jump onto your podcast and also, be interested in cybersecurity and hacking and all that. So great job, Jack.
Thank you.
I guess we can go back by this extremely fast. But what about an episode that really, changed the way you think or changed your perspective? Like, that had like a personal impact on you. Like, can you talk to me about that?
I'm not sure about that. I mean, I'm sure I could come up with something, but I think just over in the long run, seeing data breach after data breach and thinking to myself, well, there's nothing I can do to stop my data from getting out there. I guess I should give up on privacy and security. That's kind of how I felt after a while. Just like, yeah, everyone's data's been out there at this point. There's no point in trying to keep things secure anymore. You feel this defeatist kind of attitude. And I think after a while, I just got really into privacy, and I realized, wait a minute, if I gave a fake name to this company and a fake email address and a fake phone number, and then it was breached, I wouldn't care at all, because that's only a number, that's only a phone number that they have. And it's not a number I use in anything else ever. The same with the password. I don't use that password anywhere else, or email address anywhere else. And so that's what really brought me into being a privacy advocate, is just after seeing hundreds and hundreds of breaches out there and my data being leaked again and again and again and again, I realized I got to stop giving my data to people. That's my fault. Why was I doing that? And so I use a fake name everywhere I go. I use credit cards, virtual credit cards that are only for that site, or pay with cash as much as possible, or cryptocurrency, something that can't be tracked to me. And yeah, fake names everywhere, a unique email address for every single site I sign up for. I have graphene on my phone, which de-Googles my phone, and there's no Apple going on in there either. So it's like, well, I got to get my data out of these big tech giants' hands, because I don't know, they're looking at it, or someday they'll get breached or something. So everything is end-to-end encrypted if I can, or self-hosted. And I just really I really tried hard to reel back all the data that I've given out in the world, because I think the biggest problem with privacy today is we just keep giving our data away. We post information about us on social media, but we also just, anyone who asks, it's like, yeah, here's my name, here's my number, all this sort of thing. Like, I have a car, and my car is registered at the dealership under a fake name. And so every time I go to the dealership to get work on it, I give a fake name, and they've never verified what my name is. I take the train a lot, and my train ticket has a fake name on it. Like, it's really remarkable how many things you think you need your name on, here's my train ticket, but it's just a phony name. It doesn't matter. They just want the QR code, and they just want to make sure you paid for your seat, and that's that. And so I just try hard to do this. And another thing is, I feel like the amount of, I don't know, I feel like I've been sort of social engineered into giving up my data. Like, oh, everyone's doing it, or we need it for this, or we need it for that. You liars. You don't need it for any of this stuff. And I feel like I'm being tricked into giving it to them. And so I don't mind tricking them back into saying, no, I'm not giving you that. Here's my name, and deal with that. And it's not even a real name. So I feel like I've been tricked for so many years, and that, again, they'll take care of my privacy. They treat my privacy with respect. Nope, I don't think you will. And so I have to take my own privacy into respect. Thank you very much. And so I don't mind lying to them in that regard, because I know that they've lied to me hundreds of times before. Big corporations, governments, all these places they don't have my privacy in as a priority. And so I have to take it into my own hands. So I think your question is, what have I learned over the course of making these episodes? This is what I've learned, is I can do something about the breaches in the world by taking care of my own privacy and stopping giving information about myself out there in the world.
Interesting. You being very private and secretive, but having a huge following and a big fandom and everything, how do you interact with your fans? How do you build the community while being anonymous and stuff?
I wear a disguise. When I go to DEF CON or conferences, later on this week, I'm going to be going to RSA conference in San Francisco. And I wear this big black hat and these dark sunglasses, and then a bandana across my face. And so you cannot see my face at all. You can see my ears. That's not quite covered. Sometimes I cover them as well. But there's almost no aspect of my face that you can see when you meet me in person. Yet there I am. I look like a bandit, almost like a cowboy, but not quite a cowboy. Just an old time bandit. Because I have a mask over my face. And so some casinos in Las Vegas really hate this. They're like, you can't wear a bandit costume in our casino. And so in that case, I put a N95 mask on, and I say, well, I'm going to wear this mask because there's COVID, and everyone wears masks in this place. And so they allow that. And it's kind of funny where, a mask is allowed, but a bandana isn't, which is the same thing. It's a mask. So yeah, I get stopped some places, but that's exactly how I interact. So I meet hundreds of people in this costume. And then that costume is kind of branded as that's Jack Rhysider. He's the guy with the big black hat and the bandana and all that sort of thing. And it's easy to recognize me at these conferences. When I go later this week to RSA, I'm going to be stopped 100 times because everyone recognizes the big black hat and the bandana. That's my brand at this point. So it's really nice that my notoriety is a costume. And when I take it off, nobody knows who I am. And that is just fantastic, that my default state is anonymous. And when I want the notoriety, I just put on the outfit.
That's wonderful and pretty exciting and unique as well. All right, let's go to the cybersecurity related things that you've been talking about just a moment ago. And you talked to me how secure you try to be and try to, handle your own data and all sorts of stuff. So talk to me, like, what are great practices? I'm just a casual person now. I'm not that secure. If someone seriously tries to hack me, probably they could and stuff like that. So like, what are some measures I could take? What are some tools I could use? And yeah, talk to me about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of like fitness and health, right? There's the more you do, the more you can learn and the more you can get better at it. And there's always room for growth there. And, obviously you want to treat your own sensitive data. You don't want people seeing your sensitive data, right? So, stop giving it to start with. I think that's the biggest thing. Stop publishing things like pictures of your kids, your name, your whereabouts, your photos on vacation, where you work. Like all these things. A private eye used to get paid tons of money to try to find this stuff on you in the 80s and 90s, and now it's just all easily accessible to anyone on the internet. And we want we want to be seen by others. Like, hey, I'm doing good things in the world. Look I'm accomplishing this and that. And I get that, but so that's what's nice about showing everyone, like, look what my life is like. But at the same time, I just think it's like it's wrecking your privacy. You don't have the ability to be private anymore. And I think privacy is very important for just being able to control what kind of information is going out to the world about you. I think is incredibly important. If people know all the things that's happening to you and all that sort of thing, it's not very good.
Do you think there's like a point of no return, maybe? Because I have like a bunch of pictures on Instagram and stuff. So like, do you think there's a way that I can change that after this?
I think the point of no return is when you're in like the public eye. And like, we know the address of the president. It's 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, right? That's exactly where he lives, in Washington, D.C. And we know everything about this guy's life. And the same thing goes with a lot of government officials, is they have to use their real name. They have to say where they're located. They have to have all this public accountability. And so there's almost no way for them to hide anything. They can't hide who the kids are, who their wife is, or what their salary is. Their salary is public information. And so that, I think, is really, really crazy. And especially when it comes to CIA, FBI, or intelligence people, right? I mean, we know who the head of all these agencies are, and it's like almost to the point where we know exactly where they live and what their phone number is and all this kind of things. It's like, what? How is this? How is that guy not getting all doxxed every day? But because he is doxxed completely. It's very strange. But for us normal people, I think there's always a time that you can take back your privacy, right? So if you think about a past relationship you were in, that person you were with probably knew everything about you. They knew where you live and what your favorite foods were and what your daily habits were and how much you weigh and maybe even what your passwords are and what sites you go to and what your email address is and your phone number. They know every single thing about you. But that was in the past when you were with them. What's happened to you since that breakup or whatever has significantly changed, and they don't know anything about what you're up to now. They don't know what kind of car you drive or where you're living or what phone number you have anymore, or maybe your email address has changed. They don't know anything about what's happened to you. And so just think about it from that perspective of you can cut off whatever data is out there on you right now, so that that's what they had about you in the past, but years are going to pass, whether you like it or not, and they're not going to know where you are in the world anymore from now on, right? And that, I think, has a lot of power to it. Even if you've had all your data exposed, you could still be like, okay, that you guys knew about that then, but times have changed, and I've moved on, and you don't know anything about what's happening to me now. And I think that's the way to frame it, is to look at old relationship on how much they used to know about you, but they don't know anything now, and you don't know anything about them.
Mm-hmm. All right. What about like tools and extensions and devices and stuff like that?
Like you want someone to come and slap you on the wrist when you start typing in your name into a website when it's asking for it.
No, more
and slap you in the face when they ask you for your phone number.
more like, VPN software services and stuff like that.
Well, I can't emphasize it enough that you're the one who's leaking your data. You can protect it if you still want to leak it, but why are you leaking it? So like, for instance, you want to back up your photos on your phone. You take a photo on your phone and you don't want to just leave it there. You want to back it up somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if you're sending it somewhere to Google or Apple, what's going on there? Why are you giving it to them? You're giving it to you're putting it on some other server, and who knows what's going to happen to it there. There is ways to end-to-end encrypt your iCloud in order to keep your photo private just for you. But again, it's in someone else's hands and you're giving it away. And so my solution is to, use as many tools as at home as possible, right? So that I back up my photos at home, and then it's on a hard drive here. And then I have another place that I can back it up to after that, which is at a trusted friend's house or a family member's house, that I can say, okay, every night it gets backed up there. So I have multiple places for backup. And that's all in my control, right? I have full control of this stuff, as opposed to sending it somewhere else and being like, hey, take care of my photos for me, thanks. I'm not a big fan of that. However, there's this ease of use thing where it's like so much easier just to enable the backups on my phone with this one click compared to setting up a NAS and getting the hard drives and figuring out how the sync goes. And so not everyone is like that. And that's where I said at the beginning that it's kind of like a health check. It's like health and fitness, where it's like, well, do you want to do the hard work or do you want to do the easy steps first? And so the easy steps often is end-to-end encryption. So what end-to-end encryption is, it's where it's encrypted on your device, or you can see it on your device. You can see your messages, you can see your photos, right? So it's not encrypted there. It's obviously open. But whenever you're sending it somewhere, it gets encrypted in transit. And then when it lands on the device, wherever it's going, like some service provider that's storing it for you, that is encrypted on that device, and that service provider cannot see it. And so it's from your end to your end that it's only visible. It's for end-to-end encrypted. It's encrypted when it leaves your computer and stays encrypted when it's stored somewhere else. So for instance, Proton Mail is a end-to-end encryption mail service. So I can read the email, but when I store it on Proton Mail servers, Proton Mail cannot read that email, even if somebody came into their offices and pointed a gun at their head and said, "Let me see Jack's email or I will shoot you." They cannot do it. It's impossible for them because of this encryption. So the end-to-end encryption services are great for that. So that's things like Proton Mail, Signal as end-to-end encrypted messages. Things like Twitter DMs are not necessarily end-to-end encrypted. Telegram is not necessarily end-to-end encrypted. So you have to look for, is this end-to-end encrypted? As far as I know, Google is not end-to-end encrypted in their email or in their photos or any of the services they offer their customers. There is some stuff for their business customers, but not for their retail customers. There is some options in the Apple world that is end-to-end encrypted, but I don't exactly know what they choose to and what they don't, and it's not by default. And so you need to figure out what's going on there and take your precautions. And the other thing to think about is like, okay, well, that's the encryption for today. It's encrypted to the standards today that nobody can break this encryption. But at some point in the future, might it be decryptable because we have new ways to decrypt things? It's very possible. I mean, that's what's happened in the past. We had really strong encryption mechanisms that became broken, and now those are weak encryption mechanisms. And so if something was encrypted in the 60s or 70s, that's easily crackable now, right? So if something's encrypted in the 2020s, in the 2050s, that might be decryptable. And so governments of the world and large entities are doing something called collect now, decrypt later, because they don't have the way to decrypt it yet. And so they're just saying, oh yeah, please send us all your photos, all your data. We'll make copies of it and we'll store it somewhere you don't know about, and we'll figure out how to decrypt that later. And so that's why I like to just keep it at home, because I don't want to send it out there, right? But like I said, setting it up all at home, that's a bit of an extra task and harder to do. And so yeah, I mean, this is kind of some of the stuff that I think of when you say tools. I mean, honestly, stop sending your data places.
Awesome. That's a wonderful advice. Thank you so much for that. Here in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, a lot of people want to get into cybersecurity and hacking, and it's extremely fantasized. And to be fair, there aren't a lot of people that we can look up to here. Not a lot of security experts or hackers or anything like that. So for a person who is trying to get into this, try to be a hacker or get into cybersecurity and stuff, what would that roadmap would be like? Like, where could they start? What could they do?
I think there's some good baseline skills to learn first. And I think there's one of three that you should learn. That's either system administration, programming, or networking, like TCP/IP type of stuff. And if system administration is what you're good at, so that's operating systems, that's setting up applications, services, getting things to function properly on a computer, on a server, on Linux, on Windows, like just making sure that you know the insides and outs of how the operating system works. When you see something happen that shouldn't happen, like an attack or a hack or something, you'll be able to recognize that right away. Like, hey, I know this operating system. I know what services are supposed to be running. That's a service that I've never seen before. Why is that running on my system, right? So if you just have this really strong baseline of what your computer should be doing, and especially when it comes to servers or services like, maybe a mail service or a DNS service or something that's running on your computer or on your server, having just a really solid understanding how to troubleshoot it, how to fix it, how to get it, how to break it, how to secure it, all these kind of things is going to be an incredibly useful tool later when you learn hacking or when you learn to defend, because you'll just have this strong, base to stand on. That's one. Another is programming, and programming is something that's going to be would be extremely valuable to you later on if you're going to get into hacking, because, well, pretty much all malware is an application of some kind, right? So if you can reverse the malware or understand how the malware works because you've been programming before, then you'll be able to read the code and maybe alter the code and understand the code. And this this understanding of how it works, how the malware works, how it works through the system, how programs work and interact with memory would, again, be extremely valuable to somebody who's in cybersecurity, because like I said, all malware is a program. And then the third thing I said was networking. A lot of attacks are over the wire. They're coming over a browser or they're coming over a TCP/IP connection. And so if you understand how these packets work and you're in Wireshark and you're able to look at the ones and zeros coming over the wire into the computer and seeing and understanding that basic fundamentals of, wow, they attacked using this packet or this connection or this port or this service, that is something you'll be able to understand it. It's kind of like if one tool you have is a hammer, now everything looks like a nail. That's pretty much true if you know one of these three skills, right? Everything can be filtered properly if you have one of these three skills, because you understand how all this works. Not how all of it works, but you understand, I understand networking. And so when these packets came across, I was able to open it up and in Wireshark and examine it, and I fully understand it. Like that's a very strong thing to start with, right? So either learn system operations, system network, system administration, program, any language in programming, or networking as a good, solid, fundamental basis. You can't really jump into security because you're not going to know you're not going to understand these things first. So start with one of these things, get strong at it, And then from there, you can build those skills. You can take your programming skills to try to write malware, to try to do something that's not supposed to work, to contribute to a GitHub project that's supporting, some sort of hacker tool or a monitoring tool to detect threats and stuff like this. It's really fun to get involved with GitHub, see how other people are writing things, and then to jump in and say, oh, here's how that works. Or if you were doing system administration, you could start spinning up virtual machines, and one's an attack machine and one's a defend machine. And you can try some of these attack tools to see if you can defend against your own attacks. It's like playing a chess against yourself. And with networking, you can do similar things where you're sending malicious packets through the wire and trying to maybe capture some things to see can I sniff this person's password out of the air and that sort of thing, right? There's a lot of really fascinating things to do there. And that can take you into certificates that you can get started with, like Security Plus or pen test certificates. And I think that a very valuable resource is YouTube. There's tons of people that are creating hacking tutorials out there, and tons of technology tutorials that can show you like freely, here's how to learn some of these tools and this techniques. Certs aren't bad, because if you don't know what's going on and you don't have a mentor and you're like, what do I study? Well, the cert's going to guide your hand to say, this is what you should study. And so a lot of people will give certs a bad name because it doesn't give you the full picture. It doesn't help you understand the real world scenario, but it does walk you up and show you, here's some cool stuff to learn. And if you don't know where else to go learn things, then that's a fine roadmap to start with. And then as you learn that, you should follow your instinct of what is interesting to you and keep going in that direction of like, I really like reverse engineering. I want to learn more about this. Keep that strong, because I think the most important aspect to cybersecurity professionals, the ones that stand out to me, are the ones who are the most curious and the most interested in what they're doing. If you're just doing it for like a job or whatever, you're not going to keep pulling that thread to try to find what's more and more interesting here. You're just going to accept, okay, well, that happened. Let's go on to the next thing. But the people who are just absolutely curious and can never just let things go are the ones who really stand out in cybersecurity. And so if you have something that is just making you really excited and curious, just go after that. And I think that'll guide you in the right direction.
Awesome. That was epic. That was wonderful advice. I'm sure everyone listening is going to love that. While being on this specific topic, the last question I have for you is like, you've talked to like so many great hackers and like so many security specialists and everything. And what is it that you've noticed that sets them apart? Like, what's so unique about these people, you know?
Yeah, I think as I was saying just there, is that curiosity, being able to not just accept it like, okay, that happened, but be like, well, why did that happen? And why did it happen now? And when did that first happen? And you just you have, as soon as you see something, a threat or hack into something, it just triggers 500 new questions in your head of things you want to try. Like, could I do it with this other technique? Could I get in there using this other way, or with a different flag, or with a different tool? Like, they're just constantly curious. Would it work this way, or would it work that way? And that curiosity, leading with curiosity is such a strong way to do it. And the other thing is good communication skills. There's times where, people have discovered incredible threats and vulnerabilities in some network, but just cannot explain to anybody what they need to do in order to fix it, right? They tell the person, hey, your stuff's vulnerable and you need to fix it. And they're just like, okay, whatever. And they move on, and they don't know that this guy's really trying hard to tell them. And so to be able to formulate it in a way that is impactful to the person that needs to know is very difficult. And so, maybe that's the CEO of a company or CFO or CIO. And it's like, hey, these guys are really smart. They have degrees. They are incredibly educated. And if you're telling them about something and they're just ignoring you, you didn't put it in the words that they understand. And so you have to communicate to make things make sense to them, and they want to understand. It's not like they're trying to ignore you, but there's just ways that they just don't listen. It's just not working. And so, yeah, having that strong communication skills to underline here's the one thing you need to do. Do not ignore this. The absolute peril will come if you ignore this. And then there's these other things that if you really want to be good, take these steps and fix this stuff. And then here's stuff that you should know that might be a threat in the future, but there's no necessary need to take care of it now. Like maybe, format it in a way like that, as opposed to here's a 50-page report of all the findings. Good luck going through it. I don't know. There's just good ways and bad ways to explain to someone what their problems are.
Awesome. That was wonderful. I guess for a moment, let's talk a bit about the future and, talk to me about what you think the future of cybersecurity, hacking, and most importantly, like, your podcast, like what are you planning on it and stuff? Talk to me about that for a moment and we can wrap up.
The future. Well, I'm really excited about the podcast still. There's just so many stories that I haven't covered yet. And my list of stories, it just keeps growing and growing. Apparently, cybersecurity has no end to creating new stories. So they're always there. And there's so many people I want to talk to and meet. And I love meeting people at conferences. And so if you ever do hear I'm somewhere or notice I'm somewhere, please say hi. But I can't wait to keep making the show. But as far as extra stuff on top of that, I have some other shows in mind that I started developing and maybe release this late year. So these are bigger stories that just don't fit into a 1-hour format, but are still really good anyway, and maybe aren't cybersecurity related, but are still good anyway. And then I've also will be releasing later on this year a Spanish and a German version of the show.
That's exciting. That's pretty exciting. All right. I had so much fun talking to you. This is such an amazing episode for me. I learned a lot. You were extremely great with your advices and, you've been just wonderful. Thank you so much for being on my show. I'm very honored to talk to you.
I had a lot of fun being here. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Have a wonderful time. Goodbye.